As the Great War entered its third year, the demand for manpower continued. Recruiting for what became the 91st Battalion began in September of 1915. Volunteers became part of the Elgin Company of the 70th Battalion to be trained in London. The 70th also drew men from Essex, Kent, Lambton, and Middlesex counties. By the end of the month, the company had reached its full complement of nearly 250 soldiers, and it left for London. Soon after this, the decision was made to recruit entire battalions of about 1,000 men from individual cities and counties. The Elgin Company of the 70th was transferred to St. Thomas and became the foundation for the 91st Battalion, Elgin's own. The Elgin Company returned from London to continue training. They and the recruits that followed were housed in the Thomas Brothers woodenware factory behind the armory, later occupied by Victor Gasket. Initially, the battalion continued to accept recruits from Kent County, but in January, Kent received its own battalion, the 186th, and the 91st lost a whole company. This reduced strength to about 700 men. Building up to the required 1,000 plus members would be a challenge. In February, 2 companies marched out from St. Thomas, one east to Port Burwell and one west to Rodney, to encourage volunteers. 28 men signed up, but there was still a lot of ground to cover. In March, the battalion went door to door in St. Thomas, registering eligible men who were then to report to the recruiting center and provide reasons why they were not in uniform. Billboards, meetings with patriotic speeches, and even minstrel shows put on by the troops were used to bring the battalion up to strength. Recruitment continued right up to departure. Of the eventual total of over 900, about 1/3 provided addresses for their next of kin that were in St. Thomas. About 1/3 were from elsewhere in Elgin County. Over 150 provided addresses in the British Isles, with the remainder from other countries, including the United States, Russia, Denmark, and Greece, as well as other places in Canada. With the total strength hovering around 900, the battalion was told to prepare for departure. On the day selected, June 25th, the men formed up at the barracks and marched into town to the Michigan Central Railway Station, now the Queso Station. As many as 20,000 people lined the streets and cheered the troops as they marched towards the depot. At the station, final farewells were made, and the men made their way into 2 separate trains, many of whose cars were marked with the words, "St. Thomas to Berlin," on the side. They reached Halifax on the 27th and boarded the Olympic, sister ship to the Titanic. 7,000 troops were aboard, and the crossing took 7 days. The troops were housed at Otterpool Camp in southeast England, where it was decided that the battalion would be broken up to provide reinforcements for the existing battalions in France. For the duration of the war, the battalion colors were hung in Canterbury Cathedral. Some men were sent straight to the Battle of the Somme, which had begun just days before the arrival of the 91st in England. Several soldiers were not even able to visit their English relatives before being shipped across the Channel. The Somme was merely the beginning for the men of the 91st, who would take part in every battle in which Canadian troops would be engaged from the time of their arrival to the end of the war. While serving in various battalions, men of the 91st were awarded 4 military crosses, 4 Distinguished Conduct Medals, 38 military medals, and 1 military medal and bar. A total of 181 men were lost. The battalion colors were returned at the close of the war. They were laid up at Trinity Anglican Church in St. Thomas in 1932, after a service which saw most of the veterans of the battalion reunited. Subsequent reunions were held on an annual basis, including one in 1975, which saw 76 members. The final reunion was held in 1990, when but 1 member remained alive. The courage, dedication, and sacrifice of the 91st Battalion are still remembered a century after their departure. Today, the colors still hang in Trinity Anglican above the altar dedicated to the memory of Elgin's own battalion, the 91st.